Hey collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. If you're new here, I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing. But if you've been here before, I want you to hit that like button harder than it is to keep a night trooper dead, because what I have for you guys today is the collectibles that I would like to see come out of the Ahsoka series. All right, collectors, I always love making a wish list of things that I would like to see come to the market. So I have a couple things here on my laptop. I'm gonna be looking back and forth, but I'd love to dive into these with you guys and get your thoughts down in the comments. So let me know down in the comments what you want to see come out of the Ahsoka series. But here's my top list as of right now. First off the bat, we're going to start with Hot Toys. Some pretty obvious ones here. I would love to see Ahsoka the White. So far, this has been my favorite version of Ahsoka. I thought that her costumes in The Mandalorian and in Book of Boba Fett were sort of just like a little oversized, and the darkness, I couldn't see a lot of the detail, and I really enjoyed her white costume in this. So I'd love to see that version of her costume come to market through Hot Toys. Next up is Thrawn. I need a Hot Toys Thrawn. Now, I don't know if this is the version that I absolutely want, with sort of the messed up costume a little bit, but maybe that kind of makes him all the more interesting. But I've wanted a Thrawn for a very long time. Sideshow made one back in the day, so if you feel desperate enough, you could buy that one. But you know, it looks kind of like the more comic kind of version of him, and it's also very expensive, and it's also an older Sideshow piece, so it's not quite at this quality that you get from Hot Toys. But I definitely would love to see a Thrawn. I think it would sell very well, but again, I'm not completely convinced that I want this version. Maybe the version that we see in the next iteration or in Dave Filoni's movie, maybe that's going to be the more definitive Thrawn for me, but at some point I need some kind of Thrawn in my collection. Next up is Captain Enoch. In sort of classic Star Wars fashion, they kind of show you a really cool character who looks really interesting and different and then doesn't do a whole lot. But when Captain Enoch showed up, I just saw the fan community kind of go crazy. Some people love the design, some people hate the design, but that's kind of when you know you're kind of doing something cool. And I saw a ton of helmet makers and things like that kind of bringing them to market very quickly. One of my favorites, Galactic Armory, was putting out 3D print files almost immediately. They also went ahead and had some fun by swapping out the faces. They have like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and a couple others. They're super fun and silly. But knowing Hot Toys, they would be able to kind of repurpose some of the previous Stormtrooper stuff, do a new head sculpt. It'd be a way for them to bring a new figure to market without investing a lot of extra money into it. This next one's a little weird, a little controversial. I'm not even sure I would buy it because I don't think it would cost too much, but can you imagine having a shelf that just has the 3 Night Sisters on it? Those 3 witches. They all kind of look similar as far as from a distance, but when you look at them up close, they had very unique different faces, and it would just be a really kind of haunting shelf to have those 3 witches on it. Maybe they've got their little triangle type thing that they can kind of match together. I think they would be a mistake for them to bring them to market individually. I don't think they would sell all that well, but if they were somehow able to figure out a way to do like a 3-pack and kind of keep the accessories low, because there wouldn't be that many to come with it, except for maybe like one of those crypt type things that they were loading up. But that could be a really interesting thing. Again, I'm not really sure it'd be very profitable for them to do that, but some sort of representation of the witches would be really cool. Next on my list is one I think we've definitely earned at this point. I need a Carson Teva. Carson Teva is one of my favorite characters to come out of this Disney Plus era. Of course, I fell in love with the actor a long time ago watching Kim's Convenience. One of my favorite things is that he follows me on Instagram. Makes my heart feel so good. But both my wife and I just love Paul, and it would be so cool to see him kind of get his due as a Hot Toy figure. I love a Rebel pilot, and I love this whole story of Carson Teva and Paul getting to represent an actual Star Wars character, because he's just like you and me. He loves Star Wars. He was doing a lot of cosplay, all that stuff, but I would love to add a Carson Teva to my shelf. And last but not least would be Huyang. Huyang is a really cool character going all the way back to the Clone Wars. I think that droids tend to sell pretty well. We're always kind of interested in droids. He has these really interesting arms on his back that I'm not really sure we were aware that he had in the Clone Wars. Maybe he like reached for a lightsaber at one point. I didn't notice it, but it would be a really cool, interesting droid to have on the shelf. 2 that are sort of at the bottom of my Hot Toys list here would be an HK-87 droid. We saw those, I think, in the very first episode, and then of course we saw those in The Mandalorian as well. They didn't do that much in the series, so I could see where maybe they wouldn't do that, but I think it'd be an interesting piece. And last, what might seem kind of obvious that I'm missing here is Ezra. I think someday having an Ezra Hot Toys would make a lot of sense, but I'm not sure if his representation in Ahsoka is the one that I'm gonna want on my shelf forever. When I buy a collectible, I kind of try to limit it to sort of one representation of a character. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes I end up with a hot toy and a helmet and a lightsaber, you know, things like that. But Ezra, obviously one of the main characters of this series, one of the driving forces of the whole series, but I'm just not sure if sort of the marooned Ezra is what I want. Maybe in Dave Filoni's movie, maybe in another series, he ends up in more of a Jedi garb or something like that, and it kind of looks cooler that way. And just to wrap up Hot Toys, Sabine Wren's already been announced. That was an immediate pre-order for me. She was always my favorite character from Rebels. She's always been one of my favorite characters since Rebels have come out. Just really, really like her, and I thought they did a really good job representing her in Ahsoka. Chopper's already been announced as well, and on some of the promotional photos of Chopper, you can see the leg of Hera, so we can assume that Hera is going to be coming out as well. A couple videos ago, I was talking about Sideshow dioramas, and it's something that Sideshow used to do a lot of. Now they kind of do one every once in a while, but I would love to see Sideshow make more dioramas. So I was trying to think about what scene from this show what I would want represented in that sort of way, where the environment is important to what we're trying to sell as far as the story in the moment. And what I came up with was Ahsoka and Anakin dueling in the World Between Worlds. The World Between Worlds is such an interesting setting that it would be really cool to see that kind of platform, that kind of glass looking platform that they were on, and have Ahsoka and have Anakin in a lightsaber duel, and to just sort of see what they would do with making that a diorama. Do they end up doing some kind of background, some kind of curved background with a lot of dots on it and some lines in the background or something like that? I just think it'd be a really interesting challenge for the designers. I'd love to see what they would do with it. And staying with Sideshow, premium format is one of my favorite sizes to get my collectibles in, and I have two requests. One would be Thrawn. I would love to, instead of maybe doing a Hot Toys Thrawn, I would consider doing a premium format Sideshow Thrawn and having that in that 1/4 scale. I don't know what pose or anything like that I would want him in. He doesn't have the iconic chair that he had when he was in a Legends character, but something maybe just as simple as his arms behind his back or something like that would be really cool and incredible. But again, I'm not sure if it's the sort of slightly worn, tattered version of Thrawn that I would want as sort of the iconic Thrawn in my collection, but I would love to see a premium format Thrawn statue out there. And the other one I would love to see would be Sabine. Again, Sabine Ren is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, and after Rebels kind of went away, didn't really think there'd be much of a chance of us ever getting something in a really big scale or a high-end collectible of her. Super stoked that Hot Toys is making something, but if Sideshow decided to make a premium format statue, I would be really interested in seeing that as well. I would have to kind of replay the series in my mind to try to figure out what would be the iconic thing she did in Ahsoka that they could kind of capture in a premium format statue. And I'm not sure I have an exact moment that I would love to see. So again, it might be one of those things where I really want a premium format statue of Sabine Ren, but maybe I need to wait until she makes a couple more appearances and maybe kind of has a really cool defining moment. All right, collectors, if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I love helmets. Over my side over here, I have about 100 some odd helmets, a little bit more than that over here. So I'm always thinking about whenever I see a new helmet, that I need to have that in my collection, and this didn't disappoint. So for Hasbro's helmets, I think it would make sense for them to do a Night Trooper. They love to repaint their existing stuff, and I think they could take their current Stormtrooper helmet and kind of just paint it up to be a Night Trooper. I saw people that within a day or two of the episode coming out that featured those, taking some Stormtrooper helmets that maybe they already had and doing a little bit of paint in here or there on it. Now, truth be told, I've never been a fan of the Hasbro Black Series Stormtrooper helmet. I've always found it to be slightly undersized, and the battery panel, exposed battery panels on the back, drive me insane, and I just wish that they would hide those mechanics on the inside or just get rid of the electronics altogether, because I don't think that many people are using them. I think most people use them as a display piece. Again, what Hasbro likes to do is kind of reuse their assets as they can to make a little bit more money, because so much goes into the R&D. So I think, if they were going to bring out that sort of like yellow-faced Stormtrooper that they did for The Mandalorian, I think that these Night Troopers made a much bigger impact. I'd like to see those instead. This one will probably never happen, but in the very background of Sabine Wren's little apartment area, that was formerly occupied by Ezra, you can see his Scout Trooper helmet that is all painted up. It's sort of this like yellow and orange, and it features some artwork that Sabine had done in the past. and I've always liked this helmet just because it's so different. And when the Scout Trooper helmet came out, I thought immediately that I might pick up an extra one and do that paint job on it. Now, it's a pretty extensive and elaborate paint job, so I'd love for Hasbro to do it instead. They just released those Scout Trooper helmets, and I would love to see them once again reuse that same mold with that different paint job on there and bring it to market. Now, it's a pretty niche item to have in there. It's not like Ezra wore it during this piece or Sabine wore it during this piece or something like that. It was just in the background. Now, in Rebels, it was really popular. He used it quite a bit. But, you know, they brought out the repainted Ahsoka helmet, the clone trooper helmet with the Ahsoka markings on it. And that only appears in a few episodes too. So, you know, it's possible that maybe they could use that mold and make a little bit more money out of it by bringing the Ezra one to market. And luckily, they've already announced that they're going to bring the Sabine Ren Helmet to market. That was, again, an instant pre-order for me. Super excited about that. I've wanted a good Sabine Ren helmet for a long, long time. If I'm being greedy, what I would love to see them do is actually take that same mold though and do another version for every season, because she would always repaint her helmet every season, and I love so many of those different ones from Rebels. So again, I would like them, you know, I'm trying to meet them halfway. I'm not asking for new stuff here, guys. I would love to see them do some repaints to match Rebels from the past. Now, whenever Hasbro does something, they kind of have to think about a large market. So there's some other helmets that I would like to have made by other makers that I don't necessarily think makes sense for Hasbro to do it. So I'd love to see that Jedi training helmet that Sabine Ren was wearing. It reminds us, of course, of Luke training, but it is quite a bit different, almost like Jedi Temple guards in shape. And I think that would be a really cool one to come to market. I would love to have something like that in my collection. We also get a very brief look at the Darth Maul Mandalorians with the spikes on their helmets and stuff like that. Of course, that was made famous in the Clone Wars, but we did see a live action version of it here. And that is available from a couple different makers out there already. Marok is an interesting one because that character didn't really do anything for me, but it is a cool looking helmet, and if maybe you have been collecting all of those Inquisitor helmets, that would make a really cool collection to add that to it. And I would also love to see Sabine, her speeder bike helmet, come to market as well. That has some really cool markings on it. I think some of the Arabesh says Babe on it, which is kind of funny. And I've seen a couple people already make these, 3D printing them and things like that. And that's a helmet that I would like to add to my collection as well. Let's talk about lightsabers. Two obvious choices for me are Baylan and Shin. I thought these two characters were really, really cool. They were featured a little bit more heavily in the beginning of the series, and I wish that they had kind of gotten a little bit more of their story told towards the end of the series, but that doesn't mean that I like them any less. I am heartbroken that Ray Stevenson is not with us at this point to see the reaction to his portrayal of that character. I think he did an amazing job. It's so weird to think that I was seeing him at Star Wars Celebration earlier this year, and a few weeks later, I think it was 6 weeks later, he was gone. It's just such a shame. That character and his portrayal of that character was so good, and I think I definitely need to have Baylan and Shen's lightsabers in my collection. I can tell you that Korbanth, which is a fantastic maker, is already making these, so those are available through their store, and I'm sure a lot of other people will be making them too. This doesn't technically qualify as a lightsaber, but I would love to see the Blade of Talzin. That would be a really cool addition. Kind of lightsaber-esque, but it's a little bit different, has a little bit different heritage to it. Of course, we saw that blade in the Clone Wars, and then we got to see it again in Ahsoka. So as I'm trying to figure out all the different blades and hilts that I'd like to have in my collection, something like the Blade of Talzin would be a really interesting, different piece. Ezra, of course, built a new lightsaber in the last episode, and I love that it is a combination of parts kind of more familiar with his lightsaber that he's now handed to Sabine, and then his master's Kanan. That's a cool combination, very cool heritage there. We didn't get to see it a lot in this piece, so you know, if I found one for a really great price, I'd probably pick it up, but I'm hoping that we get to see more of Ezra in action, more of Ezra with the lightsaber, and then it'll feel a little bit more iconic and connected to him. I have a previous video that I did just a few weeks ago going through his other two lightsabers that he has, so check that out if you're interested in Ezra lightsabers. Now, we've already had an announcement from Hasbro that they are bringing the Sabine Ren lightsaber to market. Her lightsaber is a modification of Ezra's lightsaber, made a couple things to change that a little bit. It looks like she actually kind of added some guards around the blade, and I wonder if that kind of speaks to her maybe not being quite as talented with it as Ezra was at that point. Of course, you have to remember that Ezra started off with a little blaster lightsaber, so everybody starts somewhere, right? Mixed bag when it comes to Black Series type pieces. At this point, I don't really care about the electronics inside of them, I don't really care about the light up features, and I don't really care about the blades. I'm more interested in posing the hilts kind of all together. They just feel a little bit more real to me. So the Black Series, having them, that's great, but I don't really want to pay that price for them. So you know, maybe someday it'll be a little bit cheaper, maybe Galaxy's Edge will make something, but I also want to make sure that it is in that sort of like lower profile Hasbro and Galaxy's Edge tend to make their lightsabers a little bit more bloated to fit all those things in there that I just don't really care about. And for our last category, let's talk about ships. I love ships and models and things like that. I think they make some of the coolest, most dramatic display pieces out there. I have 3 on my list here that I really want to see. I want to see the T6 Jedi ship that Ahsoka was driving around the galaxy with Huyang. This is actually a ship that I got to see at Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim. It was part of this amazing Mandalorian prop exhibit that they had, but it is a really cool model, and there's a little piece about it on Instagram right now on the Star Wars page or the Ahsoka page that kind of walks you through how they built that model, and that's really interesting to watch too. I love the paint on it, that sort of like red color, and I think that that would make a really cool piece to have in my collection. Another one that I know speaks to a lot of fans is the E-Wing. Now we got to see the E-Wing in this, its live action debut, and it is something that it means a lot to people who are into Legends and video games and things like that, because the E-Wing was featured a lot more prominently there. It doesn't mean a lot to me, but I think it looks really cool, and I'd like to see an E-Wing come to the market as well. The last piece is something that I kind of started once as a project and sort of just stopped at one point because it got a little complicated, but I would love to see Thrawn's ship, the Chimera, as a finished model. He has this amazing painting on the bottom of it of these 2 like serpent-like creatures that are kind of intertwining on it, and it is just a really cool piece. Star Destroyers, of course, are really cool, but to have his version of it with that extra paint job on the bottom, I think would be really cool. Now, where would these pieces come from? My personal preference would be that they come from NYC Sculptures. NYC is an amazing maker of models and statues and things of that nature. They're never inexpensive, but they're always amazing. Maybe in the back in the day, I would like to have seen these things come out from Hasbro, and I would have maybe bought them and tried to modify them a little bit to make it work. But at this point, I just want good quality stuff. So I would love to see NYC bring the T6 Jedi ship, the E-Wing, and the Chimera to market, with the hope that maybe they could be able to sell both a normal Star Destroyer and one with that extra paint job at the bottom. Of course, if they were making it from Ahsoka, it'd be rather deconstructed and have lots of extra details on it, so that'd be kind of a cool opportunity to dive in deeper and make a very specific one for that too. All right, collectors, well, that is my list of things that I would like to see come from the Ahsoka series. I enjoyed Ahsoka quite a bit overall. It did leave me wanting some answers at the end, some things that I wish they would have wrapped up in that show, but I am hoping that with either a second season of Ahsoka or maybe the next season of The Mandalorian, something like that, that kind of fills in some of those gaps that when we look back, we're going to be more satisfied with it. I find that that happens a lot in Star Wars, that we kind of want a little extra here and there, and then they kind of come back and fill in those little gaps, and it's really satisfying a lot of times. So guys, what you can do for me though, I would love to hear your ideas down in the comments. So hop down in the comments, let me know what things that I mentioned that you really want to see come to market, what things that I missed that you want to see come to market. We had some people on Instagram who wanted to see some Lego pieces coming to market, things like that. I love sharing these things with you guys. If you guys enjoy helmets, hot toys, sideshow, all that cool stuff, I've got a huge stack of boxes behind me of things that need to be opened and shown to you guys that I can't wait to bring you. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, where you and I can interact a little bit more directly. I'm always sharing great deals that I find on there, funny memes, polls, things like that. It's just a fun place to interact with fellow Star Wars fans. So guys, that's it for me. See ya.